What's up, family, and welcome back to Extended Cut, everybody's favorite Christian podcast. Actually, the number one Christian podcast on earth that nobody knows about or listens to.
It's an elite following.
It's a very elite and
It is the number one podcast of Hope Valley Church.
Yes, it is.
In Denver, Colorado.
It actually might not be, if we're going to be completely honest. Totally kidding. But family, welcome back. We got another episode for you. This episode, we're actually covering the book of Leviticus.
Let's go.
It's going to be fun. So, I mean, we're actually getting through, I think we've gotten through more of the Bible in 3 months than we did in 3 years.
We took a long time with Luke. I mean, with 3 weeks on Genesis, on Exodus, and Leviticus each. And so like that, I mean, you're blazing through it.
Yeah.
It's the kind of project that demands that people actually study it for themselves. Because there's no way to say all the things that can, or I even, what I want to say, much less can be said about each book of the Bible. But man, we are blazing through it.
Yeah, no, we really are. And I think, you know, the fact that you touched on that, I love the fact that you've been adding, and we've been talking about all the things that we didn't talk about.
Yeah, that actually might be my favorite. That might actually be my favorite part of some of these sermons, is talking about the things that I'm not going to talk about and talking about it by not talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just kind of the big idea that a sermon would be built on for each kind of one. You know, one example would be Leviticus 18, which is a really contentious chapter for a lot of people in society right now. And but I said that you can't understand verses 6 through 30 unless you understand verses 1 through 5.
Yeah.
That God is calling the people of God to live separate from the world they came from and to live separate from the world they're going into.
Yeah.
And that they belong first and foremost to God. And then from that, you kind of, when you read 18 in particular, you see that God has a plan for human sexuality.
Yeah.
And he has a desire that the sexual ethic of the people of God would be distinct from the people that they were around.
Correct.
And that's not a popular idea right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I think even the idea of just simply living apart in that way and manner.
Yeah.
I mean, even I've had conversations with people about language and like,
oh my gosh,
what does it actually mean to live set apart in 2025? So,
absolutely.
And I think that one was fun just because it showed how quickly we're okay with our own mess.
Oh, absolutely. We hate everything else. So right. I mean, we're way ahead of ourselves, but like I gave 3 reasons in my sermon last week on the last third of Exodus.
Oh, do we want to give them like what we talked about real quick? The 3?
Should we do okay, so the first, so we opened up with verses 1 through 5.
Sacrifices.
And that's the sacrifices that were given to God. And it highlights the significance and the importance of, and the need for atonement for the people of God, or really for every person. And it's the way that we become the people of God is by being atoned for.
Yeah.
In the middle, really chapters 8 and 9, we talked about, where we prioritized 8 and 9 among the center chapters of Leviticus, and we talked about the priesthood and how there was among a people who were set apart that another people who were set apart, and their task was to be intermediaries and teachers and representatives on behalf of the people of God to God,
bridge the gap
and then God to people. Yeah, so they bridged the gap as intermediaries. And then part 3 was about really we covered the moral law, and we dove in on atonement and the role of the goat, the scapegoat, in the other goat, or what we call the scapegoat, and the sacrificial goat to be atoned for. So those are the 3 big big ideas, chunks of the thing. I guess we should probably go in order and talk about.
I mean, generally, that's what we've been doing. I mean, we can do whatever we want.
That's true. Yeah, we don't have to do it anyway.
Yeah. So do you want to do it in order? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, let's just go in order.
Let's just go in order. Cool. Yeah. So sacrifices, that first part, all of the different sacrifices and things that God had set forth for the people of Israel to be able to consecrate themselves and do it in a specific order, in a specific way, in a specific manner, to be able to walk in proper relationship with Him.
Absolutely.
Let go. What you got?
No, absolutely. I think it's easy to think that we can come to God any way that we want, but God had prescribed a way for them to come into His presence. Yeah. And for us, the lesson is not that we have to follow the instructions that they received and walk in it, but we need to take the lessons from their instructions and walk in it still. Yeah. So even though we can be casual, even though, I've got a hoodie on, right?
Like I was going to say, because we talked about it before, like
Sunday
the danger.
Morning.
Yeah.
And my hope is that our casual appearance doesn't turn into a casual approach to the things of God.
Oof.
Because he's as holy as he's ever been.
Yeah.
And he's called us to be holy and set apart for him, set apart for him as well. And so he set up these offerings, these sacrificing moments to remind people of the need for redemption and the call of God for the people of God to be set apart to him.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think one of the other parts that I love most about the sacrifices, and really just this go around and studying it the way that I studied it for all the things, it's like seeing that it wasn't just God making rules for the sake of making rules.
Right.
And really understanding that, no, there was a procedure and a way and a proper way of really getting into God's presence and preparing yourself for him. And, you look at any relationship, there's rules of engagement, right? Or love languages, even you would want to call it. It's like, how do you love me best? Or how do I love someone best? And I think it's beautiful that God gave them a way to understand, no, this is how serious this is. This is what holiness is. This is what I am.
Yeah.
This is how wonderful and amazing. And it also just kind of shows the worth of God as well, too, because even with all of the meticulous details and all the things, it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth it what they got to experience in it. So,
I think when I used a couple different metaphors to describe the book of Leviticus as we went. I said it feels like a set of IKEA instructions for something we're not going to set up anyway, right? So it's like it feels like that.
That's amazing.
But the principles are transferable, and it seems like a technical writer, which is something that artists send to a concert venue to say, please have these things and these things and these things in place, and they can get very specific in what they're asking for. Like there's lore about a certain artist who's like wants a certain color M&Ms or a certain color
I remember
Skittles,
you talking about that. Yeah,
right. And the idea is if the artist can look and see that the snack matches the technical writer, that they can trust that the other things that are more important have also been paid attention to.
Yeah.
But if the little details weren't paid attention to and it's just a bowl of Skittles, you can tell that either these people had a bad attitude about hosting me or these people aren't paying attention to details and didn't care.
Yeah.
And so it calls into question the safety of the entire venue.
Yeah, are the lights right? Is something going to fall on my head? Am I going to die? Like what on earth is going on?
Exactly. And so God gives us this technical writer that's like, hey, pay attention to these parts of your life. And it's really an indicator for us, not for God. God knows our whole life. But for the people of God, they were able to look at it and say, is my life lining up with the expectations of God so that we can relate to him in a self way? And the third metaphor that we used was the magic eye, right? Now, I
don't think I was in there for that.
You weren't in there for that? Okay.
No.
Okay, so magic eye is something, it was like 80s and 90s kids, I guess. The magic eye.
Okay, so can
the magic eye. Where it's like a picture that's a whole bunch of dots and everything
else? So can I be real with you? I'm reading
thought I was thinking about like...
I'm reading a fantasy book right now, and there's actually like a magic floating eye talking to people.
We're not talking about like
so
the
that's what my head. I was like,
the
dude,
all-seeing eye. It's nothing.
I was like, I missed that one, bro.
None of those things. No, it's about those dotty, spotty pictures, and then something kind of rises to the surface out of it as you spend time with it. Yeah. It was the reason for the Scholastic Book Fair. Like, I don't even know.
Do they still have those?
Yeah, they sure do. Yeah, my kid. Now it's all about the erasers and the trinkets.
Interesting.
Right? Less about the books.
Is there like fidget spinners and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, okay. Absolutely. So they've still got it, but the magic eye is like you look at it and then an image appears from it, and so to see a shark appear out of dots. Is kind of an amazing thing, but you got to spend time with it. At your first glance, it just looks like pink, red, blue, green dots. But then when you let the light hit it right?
Yeah.
When you spend time with it, eventually the image comes to the surface. Sometimes the image fades from your view. Sometimes it comes stronger in your view. But once you've seen it once, it's easier to see it again and again and again, even with the same drawing.
Yeah.
Now, the trick for it is that you can't presume a meaning on it.
Yeah.
Right? But your task is to sit with it until what the artist has hidden in it comes out.
Yeah.
And so with the book of Leviticus, we have this magic eye where it looks like fabrics, and it looks like rules about human sexuality and the fluids related to human sexuality. It looks like dead bodies and about food and about haircuts. It looks like all these kinds of different things, but it's really about a just, holy, and loving God setting up his people to flourish in his image, and a means of covering their sin when they fall short of human flourishing and fall out of relationship with God.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful as well too, because, I won't say everyone, lots of people like to make the argument of Old Testament God versus New Testament God.
Yeah.
Old Testament
really
God is all angry and fire and brimstone and all these other things, and New Testament God is all fun, and that's the one that we really like to hang out with. But if you actually look at the details and you actually look at what's happening, you see so much redemption. You see so much love, so much care, so much opportunity and willingness to like, hey guys, I'm here. We're doing the thing. Like, I'm here for you. We're gonna make it work. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, same God. Across the board, same God, right? And I mean, even if you look at the New Testament, I mean, I know this is jumping way ahead, but if you actually pay attention to some of the things that Jesus says to the Pharisees, it's kind of like, oh gosh, he was okay then. There's the fire and brimstone we were looking for, right? I love it. That's amazing. So as far as sacrifices go, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we've really got it. That God was setting it up so that they would take his presence seriously.
Yeah, I dig that. I love it. That's so amazing. Second one, we talked about the priesthood. Now I had a funny thought.
You're talking about the priesthood.
I'll wait till we get to it, that part of what they did. So I'll just interject.
No, just go for it.
Okay, cool. I'll just go for it.
The priesthood existed to be intermediary. Like, so we've said this already because we were doing it out of order, but it was to represent God to the people and the people to God. And so they would regularly offer sacrifices on behalf of the people, and in doing so represent the holiness of God and everything else. It was only done after much preparation had been made. They had to wear special clothes. They had to position them. The Day of Atonement was done on a very special day, and that was done on the annual basis, the Yom Kippur, right, which is like the highest of holidays for the Jewish people, because it's the Day of Atonement. It's the day we're forgiven. It's cleansed. It's the day we're cleansed. That's a big deal.
Super big deal.
But they had to sacrifice many different kinds of animals, and there were laws that talked about the kinds of animals that would be sacrificed for different kinds of sin or different measure of sin. And there was even an allowance that if somebody didn't have enough resources, they could offer a sparrow in place of a larger animal that would have cost more money. But the sacrifice of the bull is
man. So that sin offering that our boy Aaron would have to do every time. On the regular basis, Aaron's got to do this sin offering, and he has to sacrifice a bull. And I'm sitting here and I'm reading it, and I'm like,
why a bull?
Why a bull? And I was like, oh wow, that's funny, because Aaron was the same guy that said, hey, let's make a golden calf, if that'll be all right. And I just sat there and I was like, man, I wonder if God made it specifically a bull versus like a camel or something else that would have been there.
To hold it in front of him, just to remind him.
Just as a reminder, I was like, hey man, listen, you're the priesthood.
This bull did not save you.
But remember, remember what side your bread is buttered on, all right? So the next time you want to make an animal for y'all to worship, remember all the times you had to kill this one, all right?
Absolutely.
That's just how, mind you, that's not like a thus saith the Lord, or die on that theologically. That's just having fun with the Bible, and it's great.
What a very likely insight.
I know, right? It's just like,
so a lot of the things that pertain to the moral code and the holiness statutes is the relationship to what they came out of and what they're going into. Right. And so as they came out of it, it was probably very possibly an important part of the culture that God was like, no, I'm going to put my hands on that. And I'm going to deal with that.
And part of me just pictures Aaron every single time he had to sacrifice the bull. She's like, dang it. Okay. Can we change this finally, Lord? I get it. I get it, God. I totally understand. Sin offering, priesthood, that part's amazing. And we also talked about the fact that even as they had a priesthood, we are called.
1 Peter 2:9 is now we are a holy people, a royal priesthood. And so now we pick up the task of being priests, a nation of priests even, where we're to be intermediaries intermediaries of God and to man for one another, not to stand between man and God, but to really be a bridge between man and God, to make the connection between them. And we do that through our teaching. We do that through our lives. We do that through prayer and intercession.
Yeah.
We do that by introducing people to the sacrifice that was already made on our behalf, not by making necessarily new sacrifices.
Yeah, and I love that as well too, because it's not, and this is the beauty of the Bible, because it's not, the priesthood is up here and everybody is down here.
Yeah, that's so good.
But to even walk into it, to be able to consecrate someone or to do these rituals or to do these things that created this intermediary, they had to first consecrate themselves before God.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's step one for Aaron and his sons and for every priest and for everybody involved in every step of the process.
Yeah.
The first step was consecration, setting apart and being cleansed for themselves before they could offer anything for anybody else.
Yeah. It's wild. As we're talking about this, I'm just thinking, do you think that that's maybe part of the discomfort that people may feel with sharing the gospel, talking to, people in their circle about who Jesus is and really doing that evangelism side of things? Because it might be maybe I haven't consecrated myself all the way type of feeling, or... It's
interesting. I thought you were going to say maybe that when maybe people haven't first received it for themselves fully yet. They don't maybe understand what they've received.
I mean, it could be both. Yeah. Because they don't understand what they received, or maybe they do understand what they've received, and they're not approaching it in the manner that...
But if we don't feel like we're there yet, we haven't yet fully received it.
That's true.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
That is a great question, but I think we hesitate because we don't really understand it.
Gotcha.
We haven't fully received it yet.
Gotcha.
Because it's the greatest gift we could ever be given. But even as I say that, how would it compare to being given a house? Mm-hmm. Right? Like what if you got a paid off house?
Yeah.
What if you got, I don't know,
insert whatever your thing is.
An endless bank account, like a magic debit card that always had money on it. Mm-hmm. I think we may be more excited about having that, and we tell everybody about it, than we are about receiving the grace and mercy of God for salvation. Yeah. Right. So, yeah. It's hard to not get kind of philosophical here.
Yeah, no. Right? I mean, it's a philosophical question.
Yeah. But I think some people know they're not living it. Mm-hmm. And so they feel the contradiction in their life and they're like, this is true and I'm not doing it. So how can I tell somebody else?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not about hypocrisy, but it's about weakness. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not about pretending to be something we're not, but about not being able to live up to the standard that we want to or that we think we should be. Mm-hmm. And so we'll hesitate.
Yeah.
Right?
Gotcha.
But I think even the reason those two things are possible is because we don't really understand how much the sacrifice of Jesus really covers.
Yeah.
When we're walking with him.
It's the gospel grid, right? It's just the gap between our sinful nature and his holiness and his righteousness and his goodness. Yeah. Like no matter, as we continue to walk with him, we see it gets bigger, but no matter how big it actually gets, the cross still bridges the gap.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. So we pretend and perform out of the gospel-centered life because we don't understand the mercy of God.
Yeah.
Right? Like we act like we're something we're not because we don't understand what we have.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
And we're ashamed of our weakness because we don't understand what we have in the gospel. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. So priesthood, consecration.
So last thought about the priesthood is that the role of a pastor is not to do all of the work of representing God to people and people to God, but to equip people in their task or their roles as priests.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody's a priest. In the same way that the Bible calls everybody who calls on Jesus a saint. Yeah. The people of God are all together priests. Mm-hmm. And among the nation of priests that the church is supposed to be, there are these roles that God has given the church that are outlined in Ephesians with the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher to equip the saints for the work of ministry. Yeah. And so I think sometimes if we get the roles of pastors and priests confused, we end up abdicating our responsibility in both directions. Right?
Terrifying.
Right? Yeah. So like leaders in the church could think that I'm supposed to be doing
all the things.
All the things, instead of everybody's supposed to be a minister.
Yes.
Or the congregation or the people in a church can look and go, well, the pastor's supposed to be doing everything. And then, sometimes nobody's doing anything. Sometimes it's carried in one side or the other.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so those are the risks inherent in not understanding that the modern day priesthood is made up of the followers of Jesus together.
Yeah.
Not just the church leader title positions.
Yeah, and I mean that's why we have the house habit that we have, that we're a church of ministers, not a church with a minister.
That's exactly right.
So no, that's exciting, and I think you used the word during your message that I absolutely love, that I think describes it so well. You called it a catalyst, and like my
priests are catalysts.
Yes,
for the presence of God.
So you called it a catalyst, and I was just like, that's an amazing word, because I went back to my high school physics experience.
That's exactly right.
I went back to my high school, and a catalyst.
It's like the only thing I remember.
It's like it's something that creates a reaction, but isn't used up in the reaction.
Yes.
And I was just like, yo, that's an amazing descriptor of it. And I think as we're called to be the holy priesthood, understanding that being set apart and walking into a situation to create that reaction, knowing and walking in confidence that we're not going to get burned up. We're not going to get used up in the midst of it. Good. Like, we're still going to remain. Like, it's not going to be something that absolutely destroys us. God doesn't call us to make disciples so that we can just go break ourselves and work 57 hours. He calls us to make disciples because he's already there and he's doing it.
So good.
And we're just there to kind of be that, okay, cool, now this amazing and wonderful thing is happening,
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
The burning bush.
Yeah, I know.
It burned without being burned up. So it was a catalyst for the presence of God.
You just made Prince of Egypt better for me.
There we go. Yeah. Burned without being burned up. I heard somewhere, it's probably on a podcast, they were saying that bushes catch on fire in the desert, like kind of on the regular. It's just they overheat, because they dry up and catch on fire. So it wasn't a surprise that the bush was on fire.
It was a surprise.
It was a surprise that it wasn't burning up, and also that a voice was coming out of it. I'm sure had something to do with it. But it's not about finding the fire, it's about finding the right fire.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's real. Man, finding the right fire. There you go. That'll preach. Jeez. I mean, do you want to do a whole podcast on finding the right fire?
Hey, look, we could talk about starting the right fire. So Aaron's sons, after the priesthood, so there are all these rules.
So we talked about that. Actually,
did you really? I didn't talk about it. I forgot about it. It was one of the sermons I didn't preach.
So I was talking to one of with somebody in our small group. Their kids were in youth, and they were talking about the fact that they were talking about it afterwards, and the student was like, yeah, Aaron's sons got set on fire. And I was like, wait, what? They're like, Larry said this? Because that moment was so funny, because I sped bump it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, and this is what
they offered
God
the strange fire.
Yeah, this is what God has set forth, and this is how we're supposed to go. And if you want to find out what happens when you don't do it right, check out the next chapter. Bro, when I tell you, I have never seen any of these students pull out Bibles and their phones to look it up so fast.
Pages tear.
And as they're reading it, I see all of their faith. They're looking down, I was like, yeah,
that's real.
Yeah, that's what. But I mean, even doing the wrong thing, we think of it as, it's not a big deal, right? But I can say, if my wife has told me to do something or asked me to do something, and to do it a specific way, and this is something that she cares deeply about, and this is something that's super meaningful to our relationship together, and I do the wrong thing, it shows so much on my end. It's
you do what you want to do instead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just it's almost like I care more about the thing that I wanted to do versus what this would have facilitated and created between the two of us.
That's good.
So it's selfishness versus relationship. It's independence versus the relationship that God calls us into. So we talked about it. They got a kick out of that. So
that's so good.
Yeah, if you haven't picked up on it yet, they put the wrong incense on and then they got set on fire, and that was
well, they did it on their own. They offered it outside of the moment, the system, the method that God had ordained, and they were like, oh, we know what to do, so we'll do it our way. And that's scary. That's scary.
That in its own right. How many of us do that, right? It's just I know what to do. We're going to do it. I'm going to do it my way, right?
Yeah. I'll ask for forgiveness.
Jeez. So on that note, atonement.
So atonement.
So atonement.
So I'll do atonement and moral law together.
Cool.
So the moral law, we've already talked about why it existed and what existed in it. But I'll say that our relationship to the moral law is troubled because we think we know better than God.
Yep.
And so and the reason I know that's our relationship to it, like when we read it and we're troubled by it, we think that it should be a certain way, or we think that it shouldn't have been a certain way. Mm-hmm. And then we create our own law, right? Yeah. Like we're like, that can't be it. It should be this. And we write our own law. Like we are law writers.
Yes.
And we do it all the time.
Even when we think we're not.
Even when we don't think, yeah.
Especially when we think we're not.
Absolutely.
Like, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and I've seen that oftentimes when people think they're living the most free, they have put the most laws and restrictions, and it's actually extremely legalistic to a degree.
Yeah. So legalism, I'm glad you brought that up. Legalism is about salvation, right? Yeah. Like about doing things to be saved, mm-hmm. as opposed to like being wise and applying laws to our life or rules to our life, like a rule of life, so that we can thrive or flourish.
Yes.
And then legalism becomes the problem when we look to it for our salvation.
Yes.
Or when we demand it of other people for theirs. Mm. And I think that's where it really gets messed. That's where I realize that we think we know better than God, because oftentimes, even if God prompts us to do something in our own life, we hold other people to what God is making us do.
Yep.
And it creates undue and unnecessary obstacles for people to approach the throne of grace, where they're going to get, where the Spirit of God will inspire them with some rule of life for themselves.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, no, I agree.
We should be creating opportunities for people to get to the throne of grace, so that the law of God that's written on our hearts, mm-hmm. can be revealed to a person, instead of throwing our own laws at people and demanding that they do that to get to the grace of God.
Yeah, no, definitely. 1,000% agree. And I think that when it comes to just that aspect of walking in freedom with the atonement, I know we talked about the law. I think that it's, the scapegoat being so beautiful, part of that sin sacrifice. It's like,
so there are two goats. So there are two goats. There's the sin goat, the sin offering
that dies.
It's killed. The blood is spilled on mm-hmm. in the tabernacle seat. And on the mercy seat and in front of the mercy seat, to atone for the mess, right? To atone for the sin,
the iniquities, the sins, all the things.
Yeah. And what I love, I said this on Sunday, but what I love is in Leviticus 15:16.
Yep.
It says that. Is this right? Yeah, 15:16. It says, is it 16:16? I think it's 16:16. Leviticus 16:16.
16:15.
16:15. 16:15.
It is
16:15. It says, in the NIV, it says to atone for all of their sins. But the NIV, so that's what CSB says. That's what ESV says. I think NASB says that, but King James might even say it. But the NIV takes it and it goes, whatever their sins have been. Mm. To atone for whatever their sins have been. And I just found that to be the most beautiful description of the comprehensive covering of sin. I feel like to say all their sins is kind of clinical. It's kind of legal. It's like just kind of, it does the same thing. It covers all of it. But when it says whatever their sins have been, I feel like it makes room for the creativity of our sin.
That's amazing.
Not just the actuality of our sin, but like the times when we were like just weird sin, or like self-justified sin, or like rebellious sin. It covers what we do and what we don't do. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I love that.
Sins of omission type thing.
So the second, and then exactly, and then we've got the second goat.
Yes,
this is what you were going to talk about. The so-called scapegoat.
So the one gets killed. The scapegoat.
They put their hands on it.
They put their hands on it.
Well, Aaron does. Aaron
puts the hands.
Confesses. It says all the sins of the people, all of the iniquity. That would take a while.
Yeah. I don't want to be a priest in that way. Or Aaron's job anyway.
Yeah.
But placing all of the sins, and then they see it go off into the wilderness, never to see it again.
Yeah.
And I think for God to have the fulfillment of his law, and wherever there's sin, there must be death in the goat that gets killed, mm-hmm. in the sin offering. But then to also show his people, literally their sins walking away and going away out of the camp into a place where they would never have to experience it again.
That's exactly right.
And I feel like we need that.
Yeah.
We need that to understand that as our sins have been paid for, we don't actually have to see them again.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can say no. We can literally let them walk off, go away, and walk in a freedom that God's given us. And I think the other part I'm loving about Leviticus is all of these, we call it the book we love to hate because it's just rules and all the things.
We totally misunderstand what it is.
But it's like God's giving these boundaries and these rules so that we can actually run free and be free and feel safe and understand that nothing is going to cut and it's so loving and so caring, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it gives so much context for everything that Jesus did and how he did it and why he did it. And so for the believer, not that it has more meaning, but it certainly doesn't have less meaning.
Yeah. It sets it up.
Yeah, it sets it all the way up. Yeah. And it gives context to Jesus bearing our sins on the cross. It gives context to why he had to bleed. It gives context to why the priority and the emphasis on his blood and the passion narrative.
And all those lamb references that they
the Lamb of God. Behold, the Lamb of God, right? Who takes away the sins of the world. Yeah, it's like that's what we're talking. That's what we're talking about.
And just to think like John the Baptist saying that to a group of Jewish people.
Yeah.
Like how hard that actually must have hit and what he was actually saying.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, they're like, wait, what'd you just say?
Yeah.
He's the what that's going to do the how now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Calling Jesus the Lamb of God would be the modern day equivalent of calling another person Jesus.
Yes.
It'd be like, no.
That's not how that works.
You can't be Jesus because Jesus was Jesus.
Yeah.
And they would look and go, oh my gosh, this guy can't be that because that is that.
Yeah.
And it turns out that he was all of that.
Yeah.
He was him.
He was him. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, 2025. He's him.
He's him.
Modern slang is wild to me. I'm trying to understand it. I've had so many conversations this last couple of weeks.
Like David, gosh. Old people messing up.
Basically, yeah.
Is he counted among the old people yet?
Nope. We talked about this.
Not
it's
yet.
36, bro. Not on status still. I'm 36 years old, bro. Yeah. I got 4 more years. We got some young guys. College, so. We got some young guys in the room helping us film. So we're not just arbitrarily talking off to shadows in the room. But yeah. So but yeah, man. So that was Leviticus. Anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Or anything you didn't say that you wanted to talk about?
No, not really. I said some of it already.
Or what you didn't get to talk about, like speed round.
All the stories. So the action slammed to a halt in Leviticus, right? So we had all the action of Exodus, and then we had the giving of the Ten Commandments, and then we entered this kind of like stationary period where they sat at the ground at the base of Sinai, and then when we get into Numbers, which actually won't happen for a couple of months, when we get into Numbers, the action's going to pick up again, and we send Joshua and Caleb into the land to spy it out, and they come back with a report about giants, and then the people of God step into everything that
gets wild.
that God wants for them. So it gets
Moses hits a rock and 2-minute loop. One too many times.
Yeah. So there's a lot happening.
So what you're telling me is Numbers is not about.
No, I think that's Joshua. What?
Numbers is not about.
So Numbers is we're moving.
I'm not gonna lie. For a lot of years, I avoided Numbers. Like this is early on as a Christian.
Because it starts with a census.
Yeah, and I was like, is this literally just a book of math?
Yeah,
I'm good.
That's what everybody thinks it is. And it starts. God commands them to run a census, and they run the census, and then we think that's all it is. But there's so much more.
Yeah.
The next 2 sermon series, we're going to do a series leading into Easter on just because of the timing of things. We're going to do a series on Behold the King. It'll be on Jesus.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about just the hidden Jesus, humble Jesus. Well, the hidden King, the humble King, and the victorious King.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. That'll be the next time you hear about us. And then we're going to do a series called All of Me, which talks about, out of Easter, just about health, just being a healthy human.
Love it.
And then we'll jump into numbers.
I love it.
So
absolutely spectacular.
A lot to come. It's exciting.
So you guys are going to see a few more podcasts from us as well too. So like the King and All of Me and all the healthy stuff.
All the health stuff.
We might have to do some push-ups on that one. Have a push-up contest.
You probably should.
Yeah.
I'll destroy you.
See how funny Pastor David is?
In my heart.
He's got
He's like,
he's got jokes. I love it.
right now.
No, I mean, I'm game. We can do it. I'm a little sore, but whatever. It's all good. Well, family, if you don't have anything else.
Already.
Dude, it's not an excuse. You know what? No. We're not going to settle this in front of the children. We're not doing this, okay? Well, family, thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of Extended Cut. We can't wait to see you guys next time. Share this with people. It's kind of a fun podcast. We love doing it, and we really, really hope that this is encouraging to you guys. So we'll see you next time, y'all. Bye. Bye.
Bye.